This video is intended to demystify Programme Increment Planning, a big event that forms a key part of the Scaled Agile Framework. So what is the Scaled Agile Framework? First and foremost, SAFE is most easily understood if you think of it all as being a collection of largely pre-existing patterns, a pattern of sub-patterns if you like. SAFE exists to help large groups of people solve complex problems. You need at least 5 teams and 50 people to justify the additional overhead of working in this way, and the model supports much larger teams too. Hundreds or even thousands of separate teams can leverage the framework to align their activities to a common objective. The Scaled Agile Framework has been iterated on multiple times since its origin in 2007, and as of January 2020, it's now in its 5th major version. The ongoing development of the framework is managed by the Scaled Agile organization and contributed to by thousands of professionals from all over the world. So if that's Scaled Agile, what's Agile? Agile is commonly mistaken for Scrum. In fact, Scrum is a specific application of Agile, designed to help teams iteratively deliver value. As an aside, Scrum is one of the patterns that Scaled Agile takes advantage of. Many people think of Agile as a framework. In reality, Agile is largely about mindset. If you'd like to know more about what a mindset is, Dr. Carol S. Dweck's book on the subject is a great place to start. Carol compares fixed and growth mindsets, showing how the way that we look at the world massively affects our potential, much more so than whatever random attributes we just happen to be born with. So what was that SAFE thing again? SAFE is short for Scaled Agile Framework. It's a framework and not a methodology. It contains many pre-existing Agile patterns, including that Scrum thing we talked about earlier, Extreme Programming, or XP, a pair work pattern that, like Scrum, predates Agile, Kanban, a visual workflow management tool that traces its origins back to Toyota, Lean software development, which also originated from the Toyota production system, and even more. It's designed for situations where multiple Agile teams need to collaborate on a single integrated solution. Agile teams start by doing a little bit of planning. Then, after a set amount of time has elapsed, they will have released some value and be ready to plan again. This amount of time, by the way, is quite often referred to as either a sprint or an iteration. It's the same thing in either case. In SAFE, a bunch of teams are doing the cycle at the same time, starting and stopping on the same days. A bunch of these sprints or iterations are collected together into a larger time box, called a Programme Increment. And that Programme Increment starts with Programme Increment Planning. So what's PI planning all about? Well, it happens on a regular cadence, typically every 8 to 12 weeks or so. It's face-to-face, happens in a big room, and it spans 2 very full days. All members of all teams work together at the same time in a team of teams that SAFE refers to as an Agile release train. Everyone from this Agile release train participates in PI planning. Development activity is planned and compared to business goals in order that the two are appropriately aligned. Collaboration between teams, that's not just within teams, during the event itself is actively encouraged. Teams figure out where they have dependencies and share the information with each other, adjusting their plans as they work towards the most optimal order in which to execute. Any required decisions, including stuff about funding or changes to scope, are made in the room by the attendees. Of course, it might not be possible to be in the same room. There are alternatives and even technical options that can help make distributed planning work. Just be aware that it will be harder if people aren't co-located. At first, PI planning can seem a lot like chaos or even a party. This will initially be very confrontational and challenging if you haven't experienced it before. The good thing is that it's actually much more like this intersection. Yeah, there's a lot going on, but there's also structured self-organization that's focused on achieving valuable results. The default agenda for PI planning starts with some high-level business context, typically given by a senior business executive. That's followed by the group of people inside your team of teams who are responsible for setting the vision for the products and services that the group is responsible for. These people are often called product owners or product management. Next comes specific technical things about how we're going to achieve the results that the vision laid out for us. Then the person, typically referred to as a release train engineer, who's facilitating the rest of the Programme Increment Planning event, will explain the mechanics of the next 2 days, the whens, the wheres, the hows, all that sort of stuff. After lunch, teams break out from the Agile release train and start planning how they're going to contribute to the vision. The team plan is presented to the Agile release train for further feedback and questions. After that, the bulk of the PI planning attendees head home for the evening, while the key decision makers stay behind for a management review session, during which lessons learned on day 1 are reviewed and any decisions that might impact the plan are made. Day 2 starts with a quick recap that will likely include the results of last night's management review session. Teams take all feedback and any updated information from the management review into consideration during their second breakout, which is used to revise and complete their plan. The team's second draft is presented as if it's final at the second plan review. It's important that any identified risks and impediments are also discussed here in front of the Agile release train. Any risks which have survived previous discussion are then sorted into 4 categories: resolved, owned, accepted, or mitigated. With plans, impediments, and risks now all understood, the whole group is asked to vote as to how confident they are about completing the identified work in the next program increment period. If confidence is low and it's not obvious what needs to be done to reach high confidence, teams break out and do more planning. Once a plan has been agreed, a retrospective of the PI planning event itself is held, so that lessons learned can be leveraged ahead of the next PI planning event. If you'd like to know more about any of this, the SAFE website, which is at www.scaledagileframework.com, is a great place to start. The website includes the big picture of the SAFE framework, and every component of it is clickable, with pages and pages of well-written, detailed descriptions to pore over. Finally, if you have any questions about SAFE or PI planning, please feel free to leave them in the comments. There's also lots of information available on the wider internet, and most of it's free. Just follow your nose.